Hi guys, I've been getting people asking me to answer some simple, basic questions about home cinema. So here are 10 quickfire questions about home cinema terminology that I can answer just real quick. What is 4K? 4K refers to the resolution of video using the number of pixels, lines, that are used to create the image on screen. With Full HD, you may be familiar with the term 1080p, which refers to the number of vertical lines that are used to make the image. 4K, or 4000, is actually a little misleading because it refers to a rounded up number that relates to the number of horizontal pixels that make up the 4K image. 3840 lines are used to make up 4K resolution. And when paired with 2160 vertical pixels, it creates nearly 8.3 million total pixels on screen, compared to Full HD, which creates just under 2.1 million pixels on screen. So with nearly 4 times the picture quality, 4K is a significant upgrade on HD. Now, what is HDR and HLG? HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. Dynamic range is in essence the difference between the blackest black and the whitest white when we talk about TVs and displays. HDR displays have more ability to differentiate between the shades of colour from a standard dynamic range TV, which means that the colours are more vibrant, they're more detailed, and this makes for much better viewing quality. HLG is slightly different. It stands for Hybrid Log Gamma. Now, forget the name. The only thing you really need to know is that it's a fancy term for the broadcast version of HDR. In 2021 and beyond, you should make sure that whatever display, projector, TV you buy, it is compatible with HDR and HLG. There are a few different types of HDR, but the main one you need to look out for is HDR10. This offers a static setting across the content that you watch to deliver the content in the best way across all scenes in the movie. Which brings me on to my next quickfire question. What is Dolby Vision? Dolby Vision is essentially a type of HDR technology. But while HDR10 is a static metadata-based HDR that doesn't change the settings throughout the movie, Dolby Vision changes the HDR output scene by scene, frame by frame. So it can actually dynamically change the settings of HDR depending on the data that's in the frame, in real time. This makes for stunning imagery and excellent color detail. Dolby Vision can also offer an even higher dynamic range than HDR10, so you are talking about even more, tens of thousands of differences between the blackest black and the whitest white. So no washed out colours and deep, deep blacks. A great way to test out how good your HDR is by looking at scenes where there are lots of the similar colour on top of one another. Look for somebody on a white background with a white suit. Lucy is a really good example of this towards the end of the movie. Morgan Freeman is wearing a white coat on a white background, and you can actually see the differences very, very clearly between the different shades of white. It's the same thing with dark scenes. Look for something like a horror movie that's got lots of dark areas. If you can see a lot of detail between the different shades of dark colours, then you know you've got a very, very good HDR output. What is speaker sensitivity, or SPL? The sensitivity of a speaker relates to its loudness when a consistent amount of power is being applied to it and the listener is at a set distance. When a speaker that you are considering buying, for instance, states that it is 90 dB sensitive, or decibels, it tells you that this speaker can produce 90 decibels of loudness when 1 watt of power is applied to it, with the listener sitting at 1 meter away, directly in front of the speaker, might I add. The thing about sound is it dissipates over time and distance, meaning that when you double the distance that the listener is sitting away, you lose 6 decibels of loudness. So at 2 meters away, the same speaker will be able to hit the listener with 84 decibels of sound as opposed to 90. At 4 meters away, 78 dB. And so on. Which is a problem in cinema because you want to be aiming to get between 85 and 105 decibels at the listening position, depending on the type of room. To keep power up, we need to add wattage. So for every doubling of power you apply to the speaker, you will gain back 3 decibels of loudness. So the 78 dB that we were getting from 4 meters away will raise to 81 dB with 2 watts of power, 84 with 4 watts, 87 at 8 watts, and 90 dB at 16 watts. Cool, right? So it pays to get a speaker with high sensitivity because you will actually spend less money on powering them. The only other thing you really then have to bear in mind is that all speakers will have a maximum power that you can apply to them. So next question is, what is RT60? You may have heard this term before, used by cinema professionals if you've spoken to any. It's a pretty obscure one, but let's try and explain it in the best way that I can. RT60 stands for reverberation time 60, which when applied to sound relates to the time it takes for a sound made to reduce in loudness by 60 decibels. So when you clap in a room, if the RT60 time is high, that sound will echo around the room and take a long time to dissipate and return to normal background noise. So how does this apply to home cinema? Well, properly designed home cinemas use a mix of absorption, diffusion, and bass trapping panels to manage the sound coming from the speakers in a very specific way, with one of the goals being to reduce that RT60 time to a level that is acceptable for cinema. This is typically considered to be between 0.3 and 0.6 seconds, but some people prefer it to be slightly livelier and slightly echoier, but it really is subjective. You know, you have to basically make the cinema sound how you want it to sound and what works best for you. What you don't want to do is make the room so dead that you start to hear exactly where the speakers are in the room. You want to create enough of a soundstage that allows the speakers to envelop you in sound and you not know exactly where the sound is coming from. One thing I have noticed when I've gone into cinemas that have been too absorbed of sound or provide too much absorption of sound is that you hear, say for instance, when a sound comes from a speaker that's set into the ceiling, you can hear exactly where that speaker is. So what you want is to feel like the sound is just coming at you from all angles. You don't want to feel like it's coming at you from directly in front, directly to the side, directly behind, and directly above. That's not an immersive, authentic cinema experience. So what is a room mode? Now, this term relates to bass frequencies. Unlike traditional sound waves, low frequency waves act a little differently. And even the brightest cinema design experts still find bass a hard subject to understand. Without taking too long to explain it, when you put a subwoofer in a room, there will naturally be spots within that room where low frequencies cannot be heard. This is due to the nature of large low frequency waves going up and down, up and down. If you think when it gets to that middle point, that is where there's going to be absolutely no sound. If the wave happens to hit a point at that particular room where it's in the middle, you aren't going to get any sound. These areas are called room modes, and they vary depending on the size and shape of the room, but they're ultimately inevitable and unavoidable. Well, nearly. The only thing that a cinema designer can do to reduce the chances of a room mode being in a place where somebody sits is by putting multiple subwoofers in the space, so as to cover more ground with bass frequencies. It is generally considered good practice to put 2 to 4 subs in any cinema design, ideally in a way that means that they don't mirror one another, so they're sending exactly the same waves. Because ultimately, bearing in mind all of your subs will be working off of the same channel. The more random, the more likely you are to cover all bases, but there are technologies that you can use in softwares to model where the perfect place to put home cinema subwoofers is. There is actually a great free software available called Room EQ Wizard, which I've put a link in the description below. You can go to that and download for free. And it gives you it's not perfect, but it gives you a great way of understanding how placement of subwoofers within a space can affect where the room modes are. It is also considered good practice and covering all bases to put subs in all 4 corners of the room, as long as it's not square. As we've already talked about in some of my other videos, square rooms, symmetrical rooms in general, are not advisable in home cinema. So I hope that makes sense. Something a bit easier now, what is surround sound? Seems like an obvious question, but it's one we actually get quite a lot. Surround sound is a mix of speaker, receiver, and software technology that recreates a 2D or 3D soundstage around you. The current entry level for surround sound is 5.1, which involves 3 frontal speakers called LCRs, and the reason they're called that is because they stand for left, center, and right. They can actually be the same model of speaker. You tend to always want to make sure that you spec the same model of speaker for your left, center, and right, and orientate them in the same way. And then 2 surround sound speakers set behind you, and then 1 subwoofer. That's what the 5.1 stands for. This is a 2D soundstage, as the sound only moves on one plane around you, so from the front around the outside to the back. Immersive 3D audio systems like Dolby Atmos add height speakers to the configuration and additional software tech to deliver sound above you as well as around you. A common misconception is that the same soundtrack is sent to all of the speakers and the movie simply sounds like it's happening all around you, when in fact professional sound engineers map the sounds created in the film and different audio is sent to all of the different speakers to deliver the desired effect. For instance, a car going by might start in the front left speaker and pan right across and finish in the back right speaker. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what surround sound is. Moving on from that, what is Dolby Atmos and DTSX? Now, you may have heard of Dolby Atmos, but you may not have heard of DTSX. Although both of them are very similar technologies, one has a much larger footprint in the market currently. They are both 3D immersive sound formats. Both are what is called object-based, but Dolby requires speakers to be in a more pre-designed position, whereas DTSX allows for more flexibility with speaker placement and relies more on calibration once you've installed to get the desired sound effect. The good news is most AVRs have support for both, and if you want to use either, you probably can. There were plans announced recently that suggested that Dolby were going to limit the cross-mixing and up-mixing of their sound formats, but for the time being, as far as we're concerned, you can do that with most AVR receivers. Now quickly onto THX and ISF. If you've ever heard either of these terms, then you've probably already gone down the rabbit hole with surround sound formats and video and audio quality. These are two acronyms you may have heard but never really understood what they stand for. They are essentially both organisations that provide a guideline and quality standard for video and audio. ISF, or the Imaging Science Foundation, as the name suggests, provides calibration software and product certification of retail products that can reach the desired quality delivery of ISF's stringent standards. In a similar vein, THX actually started as a subsidiary of Lucasfilm, aiming to set a new standard for sound reproduction. It stands for the Tomlinson-Holman Experience, so TH and then X experience. They also offer product backing and calibration technology to ensure that sound delivery is consistent and high quality, regardless of the brand or technology you're using. This has then later expanded into video reproduction as well with THX video calibration. Essentially, if any of the products you buy are stamped with THX or ISF, it is a really good indicator of quality, as far as home cinema is concerned at least. Now, I didn't really have another question off the top of my head that I wanted to answer for quick fire in this particular video. If you do have any questions that you want to ask me, I am more than happy to answer them, so please feel free to comment in the comments box below. Remember to like and subscribe to our videos as we love making this content and we want to continue making it, and it really helps towards that when you do like our videos. For more information about home cinema, please visit myperfectcinema.co.uk, where we have a huge amount of blog articles and video content for you to watch and learn and educate yourself about home cinema, so that you can either go away and do it yourself or consult with us and maybe we can help you design and deliver your perfect cinema.